Greetings, Ranger fans. Jake here as we continue our countdown of the 100 non-consecutive weeks to the 100th and final episode of Database Rangers Power Reviews. Thank you to everyone joining us this evening. Good to see you, Sean. Happy Friday. Thank you, Rudy. We did have a great Thanksgiving. I hope you had likewise. I hope that everyone's had an excellent Thanksgiving weekend. Even if you do not celebrate, I hope that it was still a good week for you. Before we get into the commentary for this week, I did want to address a small bit of scheduling adjustment. So, as I've stated on numerous occasions, progress on 99 has been coming along. I do like a lot of the progress that I have made, but it was always going to be a big push for it to hit the goals that I was aiming for, and at this stage, I don't think that it's realistic that I'll be able to have both 99 and 100 out by the end of the year. It was always going to be tight, but as I'm continuing work on 99, I frankly do not think I'll be able to get it done with enough time left in the year to finish 100. I do believe that I should be able to complete 99 before the end of the year. I do not believe that 100 will take as long as 99. So rather than have another big gap between live streams, as we kind of had, a full-on year-long break or more last time, that I needed to prolong the timeline. This one, I'm going to shift from a weekly schedule to a bi-weekly schedule. So every other week, we will be doing live streams. So next week, we will not have our commentary on 96. That will be the following week. So it's going to be a live stream commentary every 2 weeks, and that will push things a little bit into 2024. And I think that will give me just that little bit of breathing room that I need in order to finish these final episodes. So I do believe that episode 99 will be done by the end of the year. At this stage, I'm not seeing too many strong barriers to that. I've been putting in a lot of work editing-wise to make that happen. But it's just a lot. There's a lot that goes into 99. Whoa, hey, you. Don't you start that. Quiet. There it goes. All right. Sorry about that. That kind of kicked off by accident there. So with regards to 99, I also am looking to finally make good on one of my very old Patreon reward promises. It was one that I made a very long time ago, originally anticipating that I would be, completing the series in a much shorter timeline than expected. But that's going to be a cameo appearance in 99 that I promised to certain Patreon subscribers for their contributions. So if you have been a Patreon subscriber to this channel, either in the past or currently, I have messaged you if you've successfully hit either the given tier or what I've judged to be an equivalent tier. So if you have been a Patreon of this channel or are currently a Patreon of this channel, please make sure to check your emails or your Patreon message inbox, because I should have sent you a message regarding that particular Patreon reward. So if you would like to be a part of that, be a part of the penultimate episode, this is your opportunity to do so. As I said, editing's coming along, and so I do want to have all the pieces, and that includes many of you. So thank you for those contributions, and please get back to me as soon as you can. So with that all out of the way, I did look over what the schedule is likely to be, and if things actually end with this every other week kind of schedule instead of things ending at the end of the year, since we would have we'd be reviewing 96 on December 8th, 97 on December 22nd, 98. So basically, January will be our reviews, our commentaries on the finale. So January 5th for 98, and then January 19th for 99, with 100 being Groundhog's Day, which, considering the timescale of this project, just feels a little stupidly apropos. I'm gonna roll with it. You know, obviously there's all sorts of different timelines I would have liked to have played out, but this is apparently the infinite time loop timeline seems to be where I've ended up. And yes, as much as I wanted episode 100 to be done before the arrival of our second child, that is not looking entirely likely, but it should still be able to wrap up during my paternity leave. So I released episode 91 back when I was on paternity leave for RJ. So I'm expecting to basically do the same for 100 with baby number 2. So that's that whole bit of scheduling adjustment, adjustment of expectations. But considering how much I have filmed and that I don't really need filming with other people at this stage outside of just things that people need to send to me, I'm pretty confident in 99 actually getting completed by the end of the year, and 100 being completed not long into next year. So I'm knocking on all the wood there, and yeah, I think I'm the groundhog in all this. I could be mistaken. So, all that said, let us dive in and not forget our 3 equally non-controversial phrases that we should all be able to agree are equally non-controversial. So, number 1, say it with me, chat, Black Lives Matter. Number 2, say it with me, chat, fascism is bad. And number 3, say it with me, chat, superheroes are fun. So, let's check in with yet another episode missing our favorite superhero, one Mr. Database Ranger, as we dive into episode 95 of Database Ranger's Power Reviews, our review of the Power Rangers in Space episode, The Rangers' Leap of Faith. And there we go. So, yeah, today I'm using a little Chromecast this time instead of alright, so instead of the usual HDMI I use. So, the once again, the previously on segments are very relevant to what's going on. In this particular case, it's highlighting things with the Omega agents, and specifically with that demonic face that we had seen at the end of the Year 2 finale, and in the flashback in episode 87 to the More Posner's origin. Reinforcing the connection there, and that there has been this underlying entity up until this point. This is, and then here we are picking up where 93 left off. It's so tricky releasing this Twin Trilogies series. I did. This this little moment was one that I didn't really realize until I went to write it. Um, that this is Kay's first solo review in so long, and really Kay's first time doing a power review in so long. I believe the last time that she actually did a review with Database was episode 60. So this is 35 episodes later, which is just wild. Also, I like having that quick little, almost glitch with the squee, giving the little glimpse of what Kay is referring to with the recent events. But the Twin Trilogies was really intended to come out a whole lot faster, obviously, than it did, as with all the episodes of Year 3. And I feel bad that it took so long because, each episode is referring to is picking up not where the previous episode left off, but where the episode before that left off. So this episode is picking up where 93 left off. 94 was picking up where 92 left off. 93 was picking up where 91 left off. And when we're looking at months and months between episodes, that's a big gap for the audience to catch up on, unfortunately. But this also, you can see, is overlapping clearly with episode 93, where this picks up simultaneously at the end and beginning of 93. And this is also, finally addressing that Kay had never actually shared her past with anyone other than Database, and that the other characters hadn't had a chance to see Power Rangers RPM yet because of all the wackiness of their lives. And we're also just kind of jumping around back and forth as well between Kay doing the review and Kay catching up Mayo on her past. And this is all, the story portion of this right now is taking place during the review portion of 93, which picks up right where the story portion of 93 that took place during the review left off, and leading us up to where the tail end of 93 left off. So there's all of these little different points of overlap in the timelines of these 3 episodes. That's kind of hard, I would imagine, for an audience member to typically track if they hadn't been basically binging the series. Hence why we need to keep having these little, verbal recaps of this, that, and the other thing of how everything transpired. And Astronomer's Leap of Faith was actually one that I had initially been considering for episode 89 for the initial attempt to rescue K Alpha before I decided to switch it over to this episode for K Alpha's big betrayal episode. If you could call it betrayal. No one really trusted her to begin with. But I wanted to have an episode that really paralleled the uncertainty of having someone from the villain side on the ship with them and not really knowing whether or not they could trust that person. So, Lumina, yes, events, definitely, there were definitely parallel events between the 2 universes. Forever Red did not happen in the same way in the RPM universe through my timeline here. Instead, because Hexagon was active at that time, that meant that Forever Red took place not with necessarily an assembly of Red Rangers, but instead with a collaboration of different Rangers operating under Hexagon. Um, and then Alphabet Soup kind of swooped in and managed to snag those remnants due to how they were acting as sort of a government oversight of the Power Rangers. And there's also just so many emotional scenes. All of this stuff with Andros and Astronema, I thought would really work well with the heart-to-heart between Kay and Mayo. And just, again, emphasizing that Mayo does not trust K Alpha, which is smart. And has her tablet still synced up with all the different squeeze. And the reveal that the Morposners are now once again on the side of the landlord, due to these are all little things that have basically been going on behind the scenes during 91 and 93. This whole arc, 91, 93, 95, was really structured in such a way that I intended for there to be a lot of things going on behind the scenes in each episode that each following episode would then clarify. And they just toss him over and she just steps over them. Okay. So as you can see, the Morposners are still holding the cat's cradle, which is the thing that has corrupted them again. And I felt so bad working that through with Justin and Sarah, because I don't know if you realize, it's difficult to walk around with two different people holding each half of a cat's cradle. It was very awkward, and they had to stay very close together, because otherwise things would pull loose, etc. And then here's that shot from the end of 93. But we kind of fill it out a little bit more as well, because we have the connection with... So here's the reveal of our Omega, which we only really get to see very briefly. This was... and the idea of our Omega was actually one that I came up with when I realized that Rachel was going to be moving away. That shot where they all meet in... This shot right here where they all meet in the hallway, that took me forever to get everybody together for, because Peggy and Dave's schedules never matched up, but I needed them all there at the same time. Plus, that's a composite shot because there's two MJs in there. And it's easy to forget about this. Every time that you see Mayo and Kay in the same shot, that's a composite. And if they're in a group shot, that's really tricky, because I need to figure out who's going to be the person being filled separately from the rest of the group. In that case, it had to be Mayo, I believe, because Mayo was running ahead of everybody, so I had to composite them over. And that's not green screen work. That's garbage matting where I had to cut them right around. These shots with the soup agents getting absorbed was one that I also made sure to film when I was working on 87 and when they were all and a few other things where Tom, who plays the T agents, was back in town, so I managed to get him in on that. Rachel in advance, nor had I fully worked them out in advance. So I actually have MJ acting as the stand-in for Rachel for these shots where our Omega's features are super blurred. Because at this point, our Omega's absorbed all the other agents. So K Alpha's really played her hands very well here. She managed to get a whole, and you can actually see the little glowing of the cat's cradle there too. And poor Morposners just fighting to take control. K Alpha has taken back control of the Morposners. She has a new Omega agent who's absorbed all the other agents. this little effect of our Omega transforming. Also, I had to play around with that a lot to try and figure out how that was going to work. Because it's leading up to an effect that took me so long to put together. And, this there was so much CG work that went into the second half of this episode. But yes, yes, Rudy, that is true. That the secretary's laser blaster is the SWAT Megazord. And then there we go. There's the little image of the demon face that we've seen before, and now we can actually recognize it. And I got Sean Fowler of Orange Ranger Videos to do the voice for Darkonda, which is a layered voice that's not just his but also mine, to reflect the echoes that we've had when we've dealt with the Omega agents in the past. Because Sean's voice is better at having that slightly higher register, raspier tone of Darkonda, which I know I wasn't going to be able to pull off. But he has a character in his videos called the Silver Skull that I realized was going to be just close enough to Darkonda that it would be a good match. And he really put in a lot of work to try and deliver what I was looking for here with Darkonda. And I just, as you can see, I did so much little layering work to try and make Darkonda work as an effect. It took me at least a good month just to model the face. This is one of the things that really made 95 such a beast to work on. I have a little composite error there. Oh, and here's a quick reference to episode 95 when Dr. K was trying to get to her child self on the other side of the airlock. Here we get to reference the fact that Guy's memory had been wiped when he became an undercover agent for Hexacon. And we finally give Guy a little bit of a deeper backstory. Darkonda's reveal was one that I really debated with myself for a long time how to manage. Because I need to reveal both him and Dark Spectre very close to each other, or one would give away the game for the other. And I ultimately decided that Dark Spectre was the main villain, and therefore his reveal was going to be the more important one. That being said, I don't think anybody predicted that the Omega agents were actually an incarnation of Darkonda, despite the Darkonda face that I had suddenly had for those two previous episodes. And this moment that Guy is actually describing is an actual moment in Countdown to Destruction. Not specifically a child, but the Yellow Ranger, Ashley, fighting Darkonda in Countdown to Destruction, right before Andros jumps in with his battleizer. The idea is this is what was happening right before Ashley was fighting Darkonda that led to her going toe-to-toe directly with Darkonda. She was saving child Guy. That is the backstory here and how that's intended to slot into the greater continuity. Because don't forget, that Guy is from the mainline Power Rangers universe. And he still has that commonality of background that we're most familiar with for the franchise. But yeah, this Oh, and that was one of the last shots I did with the directors. We filmed that the same day that we did all their things for '93. Oh, that's just so fun. So to pull off Darkonda, um, I love that echoey laugh there. Oh man, I wish I'd done a better job editing his voice for '98. I really do. Um, I just was, I just couldn't get in all the time that I needed. This fight between Guy and Darkonda was also very rough because it was really hard to pull off a fight with such an ethereal being. I had to play around with green screens, and then all the echoing effects on the face. I ended up going much simpler in his next appearance. But yeah, just these little flickering effects. I wanted it to be a little bit unclear when he first appears that this is Darkonda until Guy explicitly says so. But yeah, I had to. And then this little line here. The reveal that one of the agents in Darkonda is the secretary's daughter, giving her a stronger motivation moving forward. So this is just, at this point, we're just dealing with reveal after reveal after reveal, backstory after backstory. Like, there's so much stuff just hitting in this episode. This is just a crazy episode in terms of all these different pieces coming together. You know, and while there was never really going to be a perfect way to pull off Darkonda as a character in this series, I'm still quite pleased with how it all came together. And just, of course, sucking around an airlock was the only way that it was really going to make sense for, you know, a quartet of regular humans to be able to deal with a threat like Darkonda. And that I did what had to be done. That little moment for Guy is sort of him realizing that he had to make a hard decision. So how does the physical side of Darkonda work? Generally speaking, Darkonda's physical body is generally played by me. It's not always played by me. It can shift from time to time. I like at one point I had Chris, who plays Dr. C, do a stand-in. Dan Spinner for when has occasionally been a stunt stand-in. But specifically for this episode, it's me in front of a green screen, scaled up, and then overlapped on top of the background where I filmed it. So there's a bunch of different layers to this. First, I shoot the bottom layer is the background, and then that shot right there. Okay, so this was still during COVID, and we didn't have time to meet up with. If you look closely here, that's a green screen right there, because Dave's kid had been born, and I couldn't get him over to my place. So we filmed at his place, and I just brought a green screen there. So that shot where he was down on the ground, and then later where he was standing up, that was green screen from his basement, where I then had to shoot I had to try and match the wall to get to match the angle that I shot him with at his place. I am supremely proud of that shot where he's sitting down, because you cannot tell that he is leaning against a green screen there. That where you have the little black strip at the bottom edge of the screen, the bottom edge of that wall. That black strip is the bottom edge of the green screen that I brought to his place. and then I green screened in the wall behind him. I green screened in the wall he was leaning on, and that is one of my proudest green screen moments. So, oh, and then of course Dr. K had to use her classic alternative. So I'll get more into Darkonda in a moment. As I'm kind of doing the play-by-play here. This was such a moment for Kay in her analysis because she'd only reviewed Samurai and Megaforce episodes with DB. I wanted to have Kay for her focus review of the Twin Trilogies be her actually getting to see what it is that Database loves about the series, getting to see one of his favorite episodes. And, still using her same little verbal quirks from when she did her solo reviews in the past. So this is very much kind of a full circle moment for that for the character of Kay as a reviewer, which has been part of the show since episode 8. And I just kind of love that I was able to do that. This is also one of the few episodes that doesn't really end on a cliffhanger per se, because there is actually some strong resolution here. Even though I will admit it may feel like a bit of a rushed resolution, and there are still loose threads that will be picked up in the following episodes. This is really the characters, kind of proving that they can manage a Power Ranger style threat without Database. And then that little reference to them having just fought Darkonda. So looping back to Darkonda, each shot that you see with Darkonda has me shooting the background, and then me putting a green screen over that background to match the lighting, and then me and the angle of the camera, me coming in as Darkonda, basically wearing the black suit jacket of an agent, and black gloves to cover my hands, and the black hood that I use underneath my Phantom Ranger helmet, and acting out the motions. Usually I'm standing on top of a stool or something to get that extra height to create that large effect of this 7-foot tall creature. That's generally the height I aim for in Darkonda. It's about 7 feet tall. Specifically because of the fact this iteration is the result of the merging of so many individuals, and just to add that little larger than life feel to it. After that, I'll take the green screened footage of me, and I'll layer that in 3 different layers. One that's mostly normal, one that is, and then 2 that are kind of a little, almost with like a mistiness effect on them, to create this kind of aura around him. So that this way is stuff over him to blur the details of the body, as well as underneath him, behind him, that could be a little bit more spread out. And then I lay down an echo effect for the movements to kind of create that trailing effect, and then from there, I do the layers of the CG model, which I will track based off the movements of my body, in terms of which way the head's turning, which way it's looking, what's going on with the shoulders. The CG model is a head, neck, shoulders, and just the upper part of the torso, as you can see. And I do my best to try and blend that with the rest of the body, with various effects, etc. And there we go. So this, and then once I get, I'll get, again, layered effects of the CG model with that additional little fog to it to create that spectral look, along with another render from Maya and CG for the eyes. So for the eyes, I have an alternate model of Darkonda that's textured differently. The main texture is that black with the with the echoing of the void along the middle of the face. But there's one that is an actual matte black on everything except for the eyes, so that I can have just an animation of the eyes in yellow that I can then add a glow effect on, and then that gets layered on top of everything else so that his eyes can glow. So there's like, so many layers in Premiere every time that I do Darkonda. Not to mention the moments when he needs to interact with somebody will also have additional challenges. I had to do Guy in front of a green screen in order for him to move behind Guy. And that was also shot in Dave's basement. The moment whenever his hand comes up in front of the rest of his body, that hand needs to be moved separately, usually in front of a green screen. So like I'll shoot myself doing basic actions but not actually using my hands, and then I'll duck aside and I'll try and match my hand to where it should be. So like for instance, when he catches Guy's fist, I actually was just doing this in front of a green screen. So there's a lot that goes into bringing Darkonda to the screen, and that's one of the reasons that he could only be used so sparingly. And when he later reappears, that was such a major episode to work through, because that's a lot of CG work, and I do my best to at least make it look passable, to at least create the effect that I'm going for, even if it can't be super polished, because the level of polish to really get it to where I would love to see it, is just not practical for one person with a full-time job and a family. But yeah, there's so much in that happens in '95 that it feels like I don't necessarily leave enough room for the audience to really process all that's happening. That's one that I'm very proud of a lot that goes into it, but I will admit that it does feel rushed to a degree, especially compared to '91 and '93, and that's because I had to move everything in terms of the Darkonda reveal to that very last episode. That big sun, and in order to not spoil the Dark Spectre reveal that I think that people were more likely to pick up on if they saw Darkonda return. Yep. And yes, Dark Spectre snagged the first version of Phantom Ranger to pass by the Rift. Keep in mind also that at the time, this would have taken place before Dr. K went back in time and created and splintered off the mainline universe. So RPM versus Phantom Ranger was the mainline Phantom Ranger at that point, due to the way the timeline works. So to clarify the timeline, the idea is that the original timeline, we made our way up to Countdown to Destruction. It was followed up on with Lost Galaxy, and then Lost Galaxy leads into the formation of Hexagon post Power Pink, and the establishment of Hexagon leads to the rise of Alphabet Soup, and then the rise of Vendrix, taking over Earth, while much of Earth's populace had successfully managed to move to the stars, thus, saving a good chunk of humanity. However, during the conquest of Earth, the Phantom Ranger was sent on a fact-finding mission to find out what was going on because they'd lost contact with Earth. He witnessed the bombings unleashed by Venjix, and in that moment of despair, got pulled into the rift that had been previously established in Lost Galaxy, connecting him to Miranoi, etc. But this time, he was pulled through directly into the hiatus. During which time, the rest of the universe determined that it was not safe to go to Earth because a Phantom Ranger had had vanished from contact, and so they decided that, okay, canary in the coal mine, Phantom Ranger didn't come back, Earth is not a safe place to be near at this point, with relations only being reestablished after the defeat of Venjix later. Then, years later, when Venjix was defeated, Kay discovered Professor Cog's lab, used that to then connect to the rift, go back in time, save her child self, who was then lost in the hiatus. Thus, her Phantom and her younger self were all in the hiatus, captured by the landlord. But her being removed from that timeline is what led to the TerraVenture project being scrapped in favor of Lightspeed Rescue, and then everything else continues on that timeline with the main Power Rangers universe as we know it. Until they eventually manage to escape. So basically, Phantom was captured for like several years, which basically spanned Venjix conquering Earth up until Kay's experiments with Professor Cog's lab after RPM, and then we have after that them eventually escaping and the events of our series. So in the mainline universe, Alphabet Soup never got a hold of Kay. Hexagon was never formed, and that version of the Phantom Ranger ostensibly never necessarily broke up with Cassie, as far as we know. We don't know exactly what the life of that Phantom Ranger ultimately ended up being, but ostensibly a happier one, since it didn't involve watching Earth be decimated. So yeah, it's a whole, very intricate series of events in terms of the deeper lore of Power Reviews. So it is tricky. And yes, Dino Charge would be considered a separate universe, simply because I can't really align it with the other timelines otherwise, because they just go back so far with their reset. The fact that Dino Charge involves like Earth getting sucked into a black hole and then they go all the way back to the Cretaceous period, that just rendered it irreconcilable with the rest of the Power Rangers universe. So I couldn't just make it be a clear divergence like I could with RPM. Unfortunately, I wanted to. I desperately wanted to. The only headcanon I really have on the Dino Charge universe, to kind of make up for the fact that that version of Earth got sucked into a black hole, is I interpret it as that Earth that got sucked into the black hole was the one that got merged with the Earth in Kamen Rider Build. So if you've seen the end of Kamen Rider Build, you know what I'm talking about with that second Earth, and that way they're not, erasing a whole separate Earth. They are instead actually saving it, or something like that. Could I imagine a post-canon meeting between Database and his alternate? I would love to see where that would go. I do not know where that would go. It's hard to say. It's hard to say what I would what I would do with that particular matchup. Just because I've been so focused on this story, which has obviously been a very involved one. But yeah, 95 puts so many different things into a new perspective when it comes to what they've been up against until this point. 94 ends on the reveal of Dark Spectre, but this one now it's like, oh, Dark Spectre's in play. That means Darkonda's in play too, and Darkonda's actually been part of this almost since the beginning. His history with regards to the story doesn't go back as far as Dark Spectre does necessarily, but this establishes that Darkonda was the one that crashed the Alphabet Soup ship pre-events of the series. Darkonda is the one responsible for crashing the Alphabet Soup ship, which was a flashback that we saw in '87, where afterwards we saw, him then possess the Marposners, which is why they've been this, this singular. They've not been two separate people this whole time. They've been a singular entity. They've been a singular mind. It was only ever a fragment of Darkonda, so it developed into a whole different personality that was just trying to reconcile itself with the people that it was possessing. So that's why we have moments like at the beginning of '82 where you see the Morposners just kind of staring at their wedding photo, just trying to understand it, and why so much of there's so many oddities to them, like the books in their apartment all being in backwards. They're just trying to resemble the people they once were without fully having that sense of self. There was also just, that's the reason that they got the apartment across from Database, even though they already had their own house. They needed that to get closer to him. So when you actually finally get to this episode, you now finally have full context, or as full context as you can, really, for the housewarming party in episode 20. Because in that episode, you don't really understand who you're dealing with. It just seems like, okay, this is just a set of 5 strange neighbors. But then once you get to here, if you go back to episode 20, you suddenly realize that you're at a house party, a housewarming party that features an amnesiac Phantom Ranger, an alternate universe version of Dr. K, an undercover Hexagon agent working on infiltrating Alphabet Soup, who are being hosted by a pair of revived suburbanites currently being possessed by the spirit of Darkonda. And I just had to be aware of that throughout the whole series. that was the context for that episode, and that people were not going to have that context for years. It's very wild. Now, as far as how do I explain the Dark Ranger in Cosmic Fury? Honestly, I would say that he ended up in the main timeline post Beyond the Grid. That would be my guess. I don't have further explanations so much for that. But yeah, the idea that the Weep Pad could be related to the transportal devices, that's a good fun theory. There's I worked so hard to make this series compatible with the broader mythology of the Power Rangers franchise, to create this deep connective tissue. Um, Obviously, this is a meta-analysis series. It has that, it has that whole layer to it that no actual entry into Power Rangers really could have. But I'm basically wanting to try and see if I could explore a story that takes place off to the side, outside of the context of everything that we've seen across the course of, well, then it was when I was coming up with it, the course of 20 years, now over the course of the last 30 years. And just build that out, give this stronger connective tissue that also broadens the world by letting you see that there are other people in there who have been pivotal to the events of the show's history. Um, Giving a whole new sense of character to the Phantom Ranger, giving life to the abandoned concept of Hexagon, leaning into the alternate universes and creating clear connections between them, um, and a clear timeline of events that is driven by character choices and their traumas. And these were all things that I wanted to do with regards to the series' relationship to the actual show. Outside of just what I want to explore with the character of Database in general, and the sense of analyzing the franchise in general. Power Reviews is really a mashup of a whole ton of different things that have been going on in my head for basically my whole life, I guess you could say. The events that we're seeing in the year 3 finale are events that I basically have brainstormed on and off over the last 25 years. Even though I hadn't come up with Power Reviews back then, because I had no concept of a YouTube series being a thing that would exist, however many years before YouTube was created. In terms of my headcanon on various aspects of the lore of the Power Rangers franchise, those were all things that I had in mind before I came up with the idea for the show, and then this show became a way to explore that. Now, with regards to this specific episode, this string of episodes, I cannot tell you how many times I went back and forth on who should be revealed first, Darkonda or Dark Spectre, and how much I wanted to reveal in terms of action. I was, I kept debating. I'm like, okay, when do I do which reveal? When do I do which reveal? Because there's so many things going on, as I've discussed, that, you can just keep having reveals, and it's really just a matter of which order they come in. So it stops becoming, well, am I going to reveal the answers to any of these questions, or am I going to string the audience along? And I didn't want to just string the audience along. I wanted to make sure that I was always giving them some of the answers, even if it was to questions they hadn't necessarily been asking. Like, why is this character like that? What is going on here? What is going on there? How do they react to this knowledge now that they have this knowledge of this other reveal that I had before? Now, does anyone else know the ending of the series? Several of my main actors. Obviously MJ. Dave and the More Posners to a lesser degree. There's only so much explanation I really can give in terms of descriptions. It's like everybody knows a little bit of it. I'm probably the only one who really, has the whole thing in my head. But MJ's obviously been, an integral part of the series all throughout, and has been a sounding board for a lot of it. Um, and I try to include their feedback on on their different characters to make sure that I'm doing right by those characters. Um, Goofy crack theory. All of databases in Universe Watchers are just emissaries under different accounts. That would be pretty funny. Um, that is not my headcanon, but that would be pretty funny. Um, this is one of those sorts of series where a lot of it is sort of that greatest story never told kind of trope, where there was just all this stuff going on off to the side that none of the main heroes were ever aware of. Because it's all happening in this whole separate universe. As so much of Power Reviews takes place in this, real world universe that's obviously not our world, because our world is also a separate universe. Um, but there's the mainline universe, there's the RPM universe, there's the Dino Charge universe that I don't really mess around with because it hadn't come out at the time. But then you have the main Power Reviews universe, and then there's our universe, and then there's all the different worlds that are kind of hinted at in '94, like the comics universe or the movie universe. Things like that. And you can't really account for all those different things in the mainline series. But you can play around with that if you're out on the fringes. And that's what I've spent the last decade doing, playing around and building out my own interpretation of the lore for Power Rangers. And really trying to make sure that it's compatible with everything that the core canon has actually done. And I've been pleasantly surprised to see how many times different things are in line with my interpretation of continuity. Outside of the commonalities between grid defense and Beast Morphers, little things like Darkest Hour right now. I'm not fully up to date on it at the moment, but it's exploring the idea of Dark Spectre having a host body, rather than just being always that lava demon creature. And I lean in, and I don't know if the comics are going to go in this direction, and really with things like Heir to Power, and other elements of the comics. I don't know. I'm a little fuzzy on exactly how they interpret Dark Spectre there. But I have it being that he's got the same suit as Malagor, because Malagor's what is the host body that he chose when he was kicking off his right before kicking off his invasion on Eltar. And like, I love the fact that almost spilled some water there. Oh, actually, I did spill some water there. I love the fact that that the comics actually gave a history to Dark Spectre and Phantom. It ended up being a much older history than anything I was anticipating. So I did make some adjustments to Phantom Ranger's backstory once the comics came out. But that's just kind of wild that, again, that alignment of these two being sort of nemeses that did not really exist before, but now is kind of being canonized by the comic books. Um, I never thought when I started the show that the franchise was ever going to get around to coming back to the Phantom Ranger. I didn't think they were going to do anything else with Dark Spectre. I wasn't expecting the comic books to become this whole. There were no comic books outside of like the occasional thing like the Paper Cuts comics, where they just occasionally would revisit MMPR or maybe do a little side story for a current season. Something that actually had its own, big arc, and its own sense of the mythology was not even a possibility that I was considering back when I came up with this show. Um, and yeah, Dark Spectre is I really wanted to play into that relationship when we got into '98. That as you describe it as him being so flippant. I felt like this show that had started as a comedy show had really gotten a little had been getting a little too self-serious, and so I really wanted to make sure the finales kicked off on a fun note. But that is obviously something I can discuss when we actually get to the commentaries for '98, which will hopefully be this January with the new adjusted schedule. So yeah, '95 was a challenging episode. I remember it ended up taking quite a bit of time to finish. Trying to remember when that one actually came out. So let me see here. When did '95 come out? '95 came out. I don't have it in front of me right now. There. Double checking when I posted '95. So '95 was in. Where is it? So yeah, that was no. Was that November? Or no, wait, no, it got pushed off. That one was January 1st, 2022. That's right. So that was so that was like 4 months after '94, which was already several months after '93. But really, the thing that kind of took '94, as I said, I turned that one around in like a month. I was really working on '95 like so much because it took me forever to get everybody everybody together for filming. It was just because the secretary was important to it, as was Guy, and had to be there along with the two MJ characters. All of that was just very tricky filming wise. It was all on the set, and having to have all those different characters on set. Anytime that you're seeing just a single person's face, that was basically filmed on a whole separate day. Again, Dave's hair keeps changing size from shot to shot. And basically we're at the point where the mask is off. '94 ends on basically the dropping of the mask. And that's kind of what the Twin Trilogies is really doing. Because that's what needed to happen before we could have the finale. The Twin Trilogies is the dropping of masks. We get to see Dark Spectre for who he is. We get to see Dark Honda for who he is. You know, 91 features Dr. K finally learning her real name. 95 has Guy finally remembering his childhood. '93 we have, um, you know, we have the reveal, the characters finally coming clean with each other, um, recognizing how the rank and file of Alphabet Soup actually felt about Guy, recognizing, um, reckoning with Guy coming to terms with Kay's past. All of this is really just characters coming to terms with each other's past. Whereas the first half um, of of year three was a lot of coming to terms with their own past once they entered the time storm. Um, you know, dealing with things like um, the Mayo remembering Freddie, and Kay coming to terms with having lost her child self, and Guy having seen um, that alternate universe version of himself that had a family, and getting R Beta's tragic backstory and Doctor C's tragic backstory, um, getting to see how the ship felt. Like, so much stuff has been revealed across the course of year three, and we're still not done. We still haven't hit everything that we haven't gotten to the big final questions at this point. Um, we know now who everybody is. It's taken this long for us to actually get to know who everybody is, and now we just have the two. We really have have two questions that have not really been answered at this stage, which is um, what is Dark Spectre actually up to? Because we don't know yet. We know about all his different deceptions, but we don't know what he's actually been trying to do. And the question from the first episode that didn't get addressed and that didn't even get recognized as a question until almost 30 episodes later, but how we got here, how did Dr. K meet Database Ranger? How does it all fit together? Almost all the pieces are now in place. I think I've done a good job, holding back on those mysteries, while still delivering satisfying answers that can contribute to that, to better understanding the context for them. And that's something that is a major challenge of storytelling that I don't see many shows do. And they, not every different show has different restrictions in terms of what they can and can't do, but when there is some big driving mystery of the show of a series, what you need to make sure that you have is, I feel you need an answer and you need an endpoint. But you also need to make sure that the context surrounding that answer is something that you're prepared to delve into. And that's what we've been looking into basically throughout the entire series, is getting the context for the answers so that we will understand the answers when we get there. For a show that has such a dense, intricate storyline, there's a lot to explore. And I've tried to deliver it piecemeal in such a way that's digestible, even if it takes some extra work to fully interpret. Then the one once known as the Morphonaut, long since cut. Yeah. It's. I will admit that the finale was conceived of long before Power Rangers Universe came out, so references to that are extremely limited. I've touched on little references to the comics here and there. Um, where, but as you can tell from what has been revealed in more recent episodes, a lot of this was just surrounding the events of Megaforce and Super Megaforce, which is, it's wild to think that I'm still reckoning with that iteration of the franchise all these years later. But we're almost done. I'm almost done. Um, and I'm sorry that you won't be seeing me as often as we're working towards these final episodes. I'm going to try my best to make good use of that added time per week. Um, you know, these streams may not be particularly long, but they're still set up. There's still the energy that I expend going through them. So having that extra evening per week um, can hopefully help me get those final 2 episodes done that much faster. Um, Either way, I'm going to do what I can to get um, the final the final trailer out as soon as I can for 99. I would have loved so hard if I could have actually gotten either 98 or 99 out for the actual anniversary of Countdown to Destruction. I did my best, but it just wasn't in the cards, unfortunately. What was that? Oh yeah, that database has gone through so much growth. He already started off the series so different from his previous self, and he's now grown so much, um, and he's not quite done. Um, there's still some very important character moments left before the series is done. Um, Now I'm not that familiar with Deltarune. I know that it's um, kind of related to Undertale, but I don't know a tremendous amount about Deltarune. But I'll have to try and check out that song. Um, yeah, the meta nature of this series is wild, and the fact that it's likely going to be ending on like Groundhog's Day is kind of hilarious of all days. I would have loved for it to be able to actually end at the end of the year or on the anniversary. Um, that was important to the franchise, but you know, I at this point I've done my best to come to terms with the fact that life doesn't always play by the rules. It doesn't always go according to plan, and that's been one of the big, I guess, personal character arcs that I've been going throughout all this. Um, but yeah, so there we go. That was 95, and all the crazy plot threads that led up to it all coming together, along with me going wild on my special effects. Oh, and I forgot to, I realized I started mentioning a while ago. The whole reason that R Omega even existed was because um, Rachel was moving away, and that was when I suddenly realized how what her character's importance to this arc was going to be from a plot mechanic perspective, because I realized that she was the only active Alphabet Soup agent on the ship, and the only Soup agent on the ship that still had their counterparts on the ship with them. So therefore, I suddenly realized she was the only candidate to become an Omega agent, and that using the Omega agents to resurrect Darkonda's true form was the best way to bring him about as a fully evolved version of the Omega agents, absorbing all the Alphabet Soup agents into him to leave the main characters at a disadvantage, as well as finally reclaiming um, the last vestiges of himself from the Morposners. even as they still retain echoes of his power. And all of this through that little cat's cradle that K Alpha was playing with in her first appearance in episode 90. Where that cat's cradle is literally the threads of Darkonda's soul. She has, and this is when we realized that 90, 91, 90, and 90 and 91, she was spending that entire time literally toying with someone's soul. And she's a character that is one I would have loved to be able to explore more. Obviously, we're nearing the end of the series. But it's just such a dark reflection of Kay as someone who was never able to actually escape from the people who captured her. And in this case, a singular person. And wanting to know, and her just being so broken by the idea of failure really speaks to her not being really one of the heroes, but simultaneously not necessarily fully responsible for her own actions. As I believe someone was commenting on when they saw how she had reacted to her fail. Yeah, the way K Alpha reacts to failing on the ship. Yeah, she is not. It has not been easy for her serving Dark Spectre as the one person really fully under his control for her entire life. She's kind of his second attempt at an Astronema, but one that is where he takes advantage of her intellect rather than necessarily grooming her for power. And we Mayo had a part to play as well. Everyone has their part to play. Everyone's important. Everyone fits into this jigsaw puzzle of a series, and makes the rest of it really possible. And I love the idea of ending on this note of we took a heavy hit in this episode, losing a lot of people who we could have potentially relied upon before. The directors are out. All the cryo agents are out, and our beta is out, and the more Posners have been knocked out. And now it's just Kay, Mayo, Guy, Dr. C, and the Secretary. And they're the only ones left on this ship. And now it's time to still try and figure out a way to go save Database. Oh, them and K Alpha, who is not exactly someone who can be entirely trusted outside of trusting her to try her best to honor her master's wishes. So that sort of manipulation of her very fragile mental state is what allows us to lead into the events of 96, which we will be looking at in another 2 weeks. But with all that said, let's wrap things up with our remaining 3 equally non-controversial statements. So, number 1, say it with me, chat. Love is love. Number 2, say it with me, chat. Trans rights are human rights. And number 3, say it with me, chat. Robots are cool. Let's go see him again next time. So again, we will not have a stream next week. However, if you are a Patreon subscriber or have been one in the past, double check your emails, double check your Patreon inbox. This is a little reminder for those of you who have been with us throughout all of this. So I look forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks to continue some of these great discussions into the broader lore of Power reviews. And yeah, we got some more reveals to talk about next time as we get even deeper into that relationship between the Phantom Ranger and Dark Spectre. But until then, farewell, Ranger fans, and let the power protect.